Over the years I've built all the doors for my fitted wardrobes by gluing 12mm strips of MDF to a 12mm base piece to give the effect of rails and stiles on the door. Today I thought I'd try a different technique because I've recently got hold of one of these, an all metal pocket hole jig. So today's video is a step-by-step guide through this process, and at the end I'll tell you which method I prefer. Why am I doing this today? Well, I just thought there must be an easy way of making doors a bit more proper than my old method. I've always thought my old method was cheating a little bit. You've got all the gluing of the rails and stiles onto the base piece, then you've got to nail them, you've got to fill the nail holes, and then when you're done, you've got lots of exposed MDF edges that need sanding, painting, etc. You've also got the real issue as the doors are setting of the MDF bending. Making the doors this way, where you're working with natural wood, which is always nice. There's less material, and by clamping, gluing and screwing, once you release the clamps, you can immediately start working with it again, so you don't have to wait 12 hours for the glue to set. But what I've realised in the course of doing this video is, as with all things, there are advantages of each method. We'll talk about those a little bit later. Full details of all today's tools will, as usual, be in the description below the video, which you can access on your smartphone in the usual way. I was determined to find something in my wood store to make the doors out of, rather than buying anything new. Trouble with working with wood is you become a hoarder. And the reason you become a hoarder is because you keep things like the sides to this old bed, and suddenly days like today turn up when you turn it into doors for a media bookcase. After removing the screws from the slat support, I then removed the support itself with a bit of brute force. I should probably have cut this off with a saw, but it was much quicker to smash it off like this, and the damage caused would be irrelevant given I was about to plane each piece down. And I trimmed off any snapped off bits of wood, as I would need a flat surface for the next step. Right now I really need a planer thicknesser. I've realised I haven't got enough of this bed timber left, but I've got some offcuts that I inherited with this house, so I've got to reduce the thickness of this bed timber by, what's that, about 4mm. But first I had to cut down each length to the 72mm width I needed for the door frames. And to do this I used my cheap Bauer track saw. There are much more accurate track saws out there, but I've built some pretty cool stuff with this one. I then had to cut each length to size, the vertical sections being full height and the horizontal pieces the width of each door less the width of each vertical section. Here's my first door. How good does this look? Plan is to pocket hole the joints together, so there'll be butt joints, pocket hole and glued, and the clever bit is I'm going to be routing a groove using this 6.3mm router bit. That is going to coincide exactly with a bit of ply that I've found in the back of the garage. This, believe it or not, is the bit of ply that I'm going to be using. I then set about cutting out the first panel, again using my trusty Bauer track saw. It's in a bit of a state, but that won't matter because this will all be encapsulated inside the groove that I'm going to be cutting. So this trend router bit gives me I'm going to say about, I think it's a 9mm deep notch. And the first panel I cut wasn't big enough for the particular door. So you do have to be a bit careful. What I'm doing is I'm measuring the sort of non-recessed internal dimension, and then I'm adding 14mm to it, so I'm going 7 rather than 9mm to give myself a little bit of play inside the notch, and that has worked pretty well. And so it was time to start routing the grooves. I still don't have a router table, which would have made this job a breeze, but my trim router is nice and light, so it really wasn't too difficult. Actually, I lie. I did slightly mess up the first one and had to put some 2-part wood filler in the groove to cover my mistake. So let's have a quick chat about the pocket hole jig, because after all that is why we're here today. There are lots of these things in the market, but I particularly like this one because it's all metal construction. And no, Trend are not paying me anything to talk about them in today's video. Now what we're doing here is really simple. We're trying to butt joints together by drilling 2 holes in one of the pieces of the material so that we can insert a couple of screws to join them together. And if you're really lucky, this will be hidden so you don't even have to fill it. They give you this handy little guide so you can work out your material thickness. What we got there, just over 25mm. And then you set your material thickness by releasing these knobs on the back. You've got this little depth guide here, which you just insert temporarily so that you can insert your drill bit and set the depth stop on the drill bit. Very important. And that's it, you're ready to go. You can insert guide stops so you can clamp longer pieces of wood. Or as I did, take the guide block off the jig body and attach the portable base adapter plate so that you can clamp the drill guide block to whatever you want without the constraints of the jig body. That way you can clamp the jig directly down onto the bit of wood you're drilling. And you'll see me use this a lot when making the carcasses for the media bookcase. So I've shown you the basics of how the pocket hole jig works. And this wouldn't be a Charlie DIYte job without me doing something stupid, in this case drilling the first set of holes in the wrong place. But with that mistake in the bag, it was blissfully easy to drill the holes in each horizontal door frame section. I love this Gorilla, this isn't actually Gorilla Glue in here, it's actually this stuff. I just keep refilling this bottle because what I love about this glue is it's just the applicator nozzle is so good. I messed up here, I've gone right through to the end, so I'm going to have to fill these two little holes at the top. You know, the whole process is pretty straightforward. Little bead of glue inside the notch. Glue on the end. And then I just start sliding the sheet of ply into the grooves. That's my first joint in. On with the quick grip clamps and a couple of clamps just to clamp it down as well. You then pick the right length screw for the hole you've drilled, and this is dependent entirely on the thickness of the bit of wood that you've drilled your pockets in. How simple was that? Quickly unclamp that. It's the beauty of this system. There's no waiting for glue to go off and just crack on with the next one. Probably don't really need this clamp because the pocket hole screws will pull it all together, but use it anyway, just as a belt and braces. And that's it, done. And once I'd assembled one door, I was on a roll. Now you can actually get pocket hole dowels or plugs, but as I hadn't got any of these but did have a big pot of 2-part wood filler, I decided to use this instead. And actually with 80 grit sandpaper working up to 120 and even 180 on my random orbit sander connected to my vacuum, sanding the holes to an invisible finish was an absolute breeze. And there we have it, the doors were finished, or were they? I messed up on the last door. You'd think I'd be getting really good at it by then. What's happened is I think when I've been using my mitre saw, for some reason it hasn't been a 90-degree cut. So these doors ended up being slightly bowed. So what I've done is I've clamped them down so they couldn't move to force them apart, and I've just put wedges in. And what that has done is it's forced the door back into 90 degrees, and then I'll just fill the holes. And with the glue set I could trim off the wedges with my Japanese saw. These saws are so good for flush cuts without damaging the surface, and the mistake was fixed. And in case you're wondering what happened here, this was my attempt to scoop out the filler to release the pocket hole screws once I discovered the problem. Didn't work. But not content with one mistake, I committed an even worse one. Having finished my doors, which I was really proud of, I went and drilled one of the concealed hinges onto the front. But the repair I've carried out shows that in any situation there's no such thing as disaster, and I hope you'll find what I did interesting. I drew a couple of hinge holes on and off cut. I then cut off as much of the excess as I could, which gave me 2 crude plugs, which I then fine-tuned by eye using my belt sander, chamfering the edges. I then tapped the plug into the hole with a bit of glue around the edge, and when this was set I cut the plug flush with the surface of the door using my Japanese saw. So good, these saws for flush cuts. A minute bit of chiseling, planing and sanding, and I had a literally invisible repair, which you can't see whatsoever now it's painted. Got so much more to tell you about, like my new hinge drilling jig that's taken all the guesswork out of drilling the holes for the Blum concealed hinges that I've used, but that can wait until the media bookcase build, which will be coming up soon, so keep an eye out for that. So what conclusions can we draw from this, my new way of making these doors? Well, I love it, but I did come up with a surprising conclusion. In this middle door, You remember that stupid mistake I made where the doors weren't cut straight and therefore they weren't sort of sitting flat and I had to put the wedges in? Well, I've still got a little bit of an issue on that door down there,
because I hadn't realised the other door was also cut slightly off square.
and I never had any of these issues with the cheating way that I used to make with the rails and stiles glued on top of the base piece. Point two, that cheating method is so simple and you can do it with almost no sophisticated tools, whereas you do need a few more things with this method.
And of course it was the badly set up mitre saw that caused that problem.
So my point to you, my conclusions that I draw from this are horses for courses. If you just want to get into making doors, the cheating method is great. If you want to up your game a bit, this is the way to go.
And of course this is just one method to consider. You've got the brilliant Peter Millard with his dominoes, and that way you haven't even got any filling to do. But you do perhaps need a router table, so it's back to that point about tools.
So I hope you found that useful. Thanks again for watching today. If you're new to my channel, it would mean so much to me to have you subscribe. You can do that by clicking on the link here, and don't forget to click the bell notification icon so you get notified of all my future uploads. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.